Welcome into the American Digital Network studio for an all-new episode of American Roundball, where we break down women's hoops across the conference. And we now welcome in our studio analyst, Monica McNutt. Monica, great to see you as always. Excited to talk some women's basketball with you this week. But let's get started by looking back to last week and some of the games that you had circled on your calendar, specifically USF 1-1 week for the Bulls. But they came up with a big win on the road at Memphis, which they hadn't done in some time.
Right, Haley. They hadn't won at Memphis since 2015, so that was a good win for them, getting a proverbial monkey off of their back. Ironically enough, as well as they played, at halftime they were down 1, but if you looked at the stats, they led in every statistical category. You got to give Memphis their credit in terms of slowing that Bulls attack initially, but by the fourth quarter, the Bulls just started to really erupt. And then speaking of erupting, Maria Jespersen had a fantastic game. She scored 31 points, a career high for her. She added 10 rebounds, which was good enough for her 20th career double-double. So when you look at what the Bulls were able to do in Memphis, phenomenal. Now, you mentioned they went 1-1. We're going to save that conversation for a little bit later. We'll talk about the L on the other side of the 1 in a little bit.
All right, well, let's move on to Houston, a team that is seeing a much improved season under head coach Ron Huey. A 1-1 week for the Cougars as well, but they came up with a big win at Temple and then lost a heartbreaker against ECU in overtime.
The Temple win didn't really surprise me so much. We talked about the momentum of this team. Now, when I saw the ECU loss, I was a little bit surprised, but I got to be honest. It took me back to Media Day and talking to head coach Heather Macy, who was one of the, I'll use the word slightly understated, but you could also see her passion and her enthusiasm for what she had an opportunity to do in terms of this Pirate squad. Now, the other caveat here, though, is Houston was at ECU. So I'm more curious to see if they can protect their home court, as they've done a pretty good job of doing so far this season. And again, we'll give them a little wiggle room on that one. I think Coach Huey was probably really disappointed in his team, but it came down to the final 41 seconds in that contest. A tough foul, is called against the Cougars. ECU goes down on the other end, makes the layup, and is able to handle their business. Credit the Pirates for protecting their home court as well.
Well, let's talk about a team in Wichita State. They're seeing success in their first year in this conference, and I know a player that you're excited about is Ranji Bassard. She was someone you were keeping your eye on last week. Did Bassard live up to the expectations last week?
Absolutely. I think not only did she live up to the expectations in terms of her numbers, but I think she did one of those things that good leaders do in terms of her attitude and her approach really becoming contagious. The game against USF, when the Shockers were able to shock the entire conference and pull off the upset, Bassard was key in that one. She had 16 points and 7 rebounds, but although she was key, she wasn't the only one. Her running mate in guard, Diamond Lockhart, had 16 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds. Now, after this game, Haley, I had to get on the phone and call Coach Adams, and she had lots of good things to say, but one thing that I will say about her is I think we kind of forget that this team has 8 seniors. And that was one of the things that she and I discussed in terms of telling this group very early on that her time with them was going to be limited, but that she wanted to make the most of it. She said coming into that game, the team hadn't really gotten off to a good start in the American, but she really just told her girls, we have to go get it. We have to believe that. We have to play harder. We have to be consistent. We have to leave it all out there. And so she was pumped in terms of her team being able to respond and get the win over UCF. She said in that fourth quarter, she let her guards go. She unleashed them, and they did a great job of getting into the paint, really putting USF, in difficult positions. So the urgency there, you could really see it demonstrated. I thought Cesaria Ambrosio did a fantastic job guarding Kitty Alonso, which is not an easy day of work. I don't care who you are. Sabrina Lazda Cabbage came up with some big plays in that game in terms of blocks. And we already mentioned Ranji Bassard. She just continues to lead this way, which is something that she and Coach Adams talked about earlier this year in terms of her responsibility, not only to be productive, but to make sure that she's a leader in the midst of her production. The Shockers nailed it on Sunday.
Well, moving on to this week, conference play is heating up. What games are you looking forward to this week, Monica?
Well, I got to say that my game to watch is going to be ECU and Tulane in terms of 2 squads that are very evenly matched. That game will be on ESPN3 on Wednesday night. And my homegirl, Angel Gray, is actually on the call. So she and I were texting a little bit, and I asked her in terms of her where she would be sitting in the game, what is going to be key in this one. And she said that she was looking to see how ECU would defend Colby Morgan, since she's the only double-digit scorer for the Tulane Green Wave. And then she also pointed out that bench play for the Pirates would be imperative. We talked about their victory over Houston. In that game, they outscored Houston's bench 42-7, so that's going to be key. When I was just scrolling through stats, you look at it, Tulane is a better three-point shooting team than ECU, but ECU has the advantage in terms of rebounding. So it's going to be a chess match in terms of how these teams can play to their strength. They have identical records in the conference and on the season right now.
Well, definitely a game we will circle here on our calendars. But just talking about a team this week, what team are you looking to learn from in conference action?
Well, that's going to go over to Cincinnati, the Bearcats. They come into this week with a 3-game win streak. And when I was checking out those box scores over the course of the last 3 games, the first 2, they shot 50% or better as a team from the field, which is practically unheard of. Now, granted, they were also filling it up around the 80 mark in those games. When they ran into Memphis in this last contest, they scored 64 points. They did get a victory. They shot 36% from the field as a team. But, Haley, what stood out to me was half of their points were in the paint. So the Bearcats are not only executing, but they're getting high percentage opportunity. They're doing a great job of rebounding. They've out-rebounded teams 4, 4, and 7 of the last 3 games. They're doing a great job of hunting the paint. We know that Anna Owens is an outstanding guard that can really make some things happen. And they're doing a great job of sharing the load. When you look at it, they've got 4 players that are averaging in double digits. And I mentioned Owens. She's really the head of a four-headed monster.
Well, we're about the halfway point now in conference play, and in the coming weeks, things are starting to become a little bit clearer probably as we get closer to the conference tournament. But when you look at the conference standings, what's your impression?
Well, I think that you've got a lot of teams lumped into 2 spots. Obviously, UConn is sort of the leader of the pack. We know that UConn is undefeated and they're having a fantastic season. Then you got USF and UCF right in there kind of battling one another. Cincinnati is really lumped in with that group. Then you go to teams that have 4. And then we talked about Tulane and ECU earlier today. They are sort of at the lower tier of the conference, but the thing about conference play is you're 1 win, maybe 2 wins away. So if you handle your business and another team, for whatever reason, falls asleep on any given night, I mean, we could argue that Houston maybe shouldn't have lost to ECU just off strength of bodies of work, but they did. So now ECU is in a position where they can compete. So I think you got to be mindful. We're in January. We've got about 7 weeks to go. Fatigue starts to creep in. Injuries start to sneak up. Sometimes our seniors may lose track a little bit in terms of understanding that this thing is coming down the wire. So we've got things that come into play. So I wouldn't tell anybody to get really comfortable in terms of where they are in the conference. This is why we've got to play night in and night out.
You've mentioned a game to watch. You've mentioned a team to watch. Who is a player you're going to be watching this week?
Well, I want to keep an eye on Colby Morgan of the Green Wave. Tulane's getting a lot of love from me. This is not on purpose, folks, but you got to give credit where credit is due. Colby Morgan is just 3 points away from becoming, let me make sure I'm stating this right, ranked 5th on the NCAA's active career scoring list. Now that is an incredible feat. When you look at what she's been able to do over her body of work, and this year, she's one of the best 3-point shooters in the conference, at 2nd in the conference. Her made 3-pointers a game, she's also at 2nd in the conference. She's shooting about 38% from 3. So really all she got to do is let her rip one time and she's making some history that is indeed celebrated. But I do think she'll get this landmark here. But beyond that, I think you mentioned Tulane and ECU as a game to watch. She's got to continue to lead this team if they're going to turn a corner and put themselves in the best position come conference tournament time. But it is difficult because, as Angel pointed out, she's the only person averaging double digits consistently, so she's going to garner a lot of defensive attention. So sometimes you're not able to get it off that first initial move, my go-to thing that I do in the gym and always kill. You got to crash the boards. You got to get dirty buckets. You got to get garbage buckets. You got to be in the right place when your teammates garner some attention and just make it easy on yourself.
You mentioned the UConn Huskies, ranked number 1 in the country. They're undefeated, having another great season. And a team, when you look at them, you say, wow, they have a lot of veteran leaders on this roster, but they also have some new faces and some young faces. How important is that for the future of this UConn program?
So that's going to be huge, Haley. And you and I have discussed this, right? We could talk about UConn week in and week out every day just because they are great. And you wonder if they fall into that LeBron Michael category where They should be MVPs, but we're so accustomed to them being fantastic, we don't give them the credit that they are due. I think not only are we kind of desensitized to the success of UConn, we forget what freshmen go through. This past week against Temple, Megan Walker had a phenomenal game, 22 points, 7 for 11 from the field in 32 minutes. Now, I had an opportunity to watch this young lady in high school when she was playing in Virginia. I called the state championship games, and she can go and get a bucket, but she's hitting a learning curve. You go from starting since you were a freshman, and not only starting, but being pretty dominant, to sort of sitting on a bench and having to work it out, having to wait it out, having to earn your head coach's trust. So I think you got to give a tip of the cap to her, as you mentioned, those young folks that are coming behind. But when you look at this UConn roster, they really only have 2 true seniors in Azare Stevens and Gabby Williams, although we're used to seeing Katie Lou Samuelson and Kia Nurse for so long now. They're not seniors. So for Walker, it's not like she's going to fall into a position because of graduation. She's still going to have to compete. And of course, you know, UConn's got another great recruiting class coming behind her. So just wanted to make sure we give some credit where credit is due to the freshman really making the most of the time that she was given against Temple. And I think it's only a matter of time before Gina Auriemma has confidence and can trust her out there on the floor for extended periods of time.
All right, well, looking forward to another great week of basketball. As always, Monica, great to have you here on the show this week.
Thanks, Haley. We'll talk next week.
All right, sounds good. Make sure to tune in to an all-new episode every Wednesday of American Roundball. Monica and myself will be talking all women's hoops here on the ADN. Have a great week, everybody.